Hello, everybody. My name is Tanya Pizitny, and I am a Quality Engineering Manager here at GitLab. Thank you for joining me for our GitLab retrospective for our 13.11 release. We have a pretty nice agenda, so let's get started. This, again, as a reminder, is a 25-minute meeting. It's intended to be interactive. So we'll focus on the previous tasks, and we'll spend some time in discussion and then decide on tasks to track for the next release. So I will kick it over to Tiago and Lindsay for the first retrospective improvement task.
Hey, it's nighttime for Tiago, so I'm here. In 1310, we had a healthy discussion about some parts of the developer experience that were not deemed as the best by certain developers. It was a great discussion. We created a poll and we identified the 3 action items that came out of that discussion. And fortunately, Remy shined light on 2 of those items and the reason why they had to be the way they were. So we focused on improving our reviews, both the quality and the collaboration, by preferring internal team members and domain experts for the initial reviews. It was noted this is already guidance in the handbook, but we hadn't really been following it. So we've gotten great feedback from the team, both in the retrospective issue and in one-on-one discussions. You can see the artifacts of this in our Slack channels. The conversations have increased. There's just a lot more knowledge about what the different team members are working on. And it's something we plan on continuing in the future. Nick.
And Nick's not here, so I'll vocalize for him. So as a follow-up last time to the compatibility audit improvement task, they opened an issue to plan a lightweight training on multi-version compatibility. They're currently gathering resources for the training and identifying content gaps that should be addressed there. And this will be tracked in the future, so we'll follow up on it in next release to see the progress. Mech, over to you for the next one.
Hey, thanks. So I took up the DRI to add highlights on wins and near misses. So as a boring solution for this retrospective, we added this in the efficiency section of what went well this month. And we are casting a wide net within the quality department with the SCTs. When they're on call, they detect, they look at failures, and they highlighted what was caught in their the tests. So feel free to read out the link. We do have issues found in Omnibus, in the search, and also in OpenShift work that caught new issues there. And we look forward to iterate this as well in the next release.
Thanks for that transparency, Mech. Sam, over to you for the next one.
Hey, thanks, Tanya. So yeah, this is a summary of some other retrospectives that were performed related to rapid actions. Last month kicked off several rapid actions in response to issues with database stability or certain types of pipeline abuse. And so yeah, we've retroed on 4 of those, which are linked below. In terms of themes that I saw in those, and I'd encourage everybody to read them themselves and kind of draw your own conclusions. But a lot of amazement at how quickly the team was able to move and address certain types of problems when that was clearly needed. So a lot of praise and admiration there. In terms of more critical feedback, the goals and exit criteria were not always clear. That was a theme through several of them, kind of a situation where we know there's a problem, asking people to jump in, but maybe it's not clear exactly what's expected or what the solution is yet, and that can be challenging and unsettling in a number of different ways. Sometimes it was hard to track which rapid action set of work was related to. Some people were kind of stuck in between, and maybe for them it would have been made more sense to have less rapid actions with broader scope. Other people asked for kind of more specific scope, so there's trade-offs there. And then, in some cases it was hard, especially when work was fanned out across a bunch of individuals, for people to know exactly what was being asked of them, what was the expectation in terms of urgency. So those types of communication things were, challenged, but also want to reiterate that a lot of progress with all of these, and impressive accomplishments. So great job to the team there.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks for the really clear list here of the retrospectives. Appreciate that link.
It's possible there's a few I missed, so if you were involved in a rapid action with a retro that's not listed there, please feel free to add it, and other people can find that later.
Thank you so much. Dan, over to you for the next 2.
Thanks very much. So the update on cross-group dependencies is that a lot of our cross-group dependencies are currently on the container registry online garbage collection deployment effort. It's currently being coordinated with a synchronous meeting. I will link to that in the agenda so people can have a look at that. So I think probably just to follow up next time would be the way to go here if people feel like that'd be valuable. Just to check in on that to show progress there. And then on the developing a risk mapping for package, we have a link to an epic there. We've been continuing progress there, getting a lot of positive feedback around the risk mapping. The quality teams got involved with a broader view of a risk map and what that might look like. And within the package team, we've actually, we had Sophia, who's our software engineer in test, create a tool that helps better visualize our risk map, and it's actually utilizing pages, which is kind of cool. And we're going to be reviewing our risks and our risk categories every month. So that'll be added to our quad planning. And that's what I have for you. Thanks.
Great call outs. Thank you, Dan. So that concludes checking in on previous retrospective improvement tasks. We're on to the discussion topics. We didn't have any proposed, so both of these are mine. Sorry, maybe in advance. The first one is that looking through this retrospective, we didn't identify much that went wrong this month or many ways that we can improve. So I'm wondering, did we have a truly standout release? One of our sub-values is a focus on improvement. So is there anything standing in the way of this focus right now? Are we experiencing improvement fatigue due to the number of rapid actions, similar initiatives? Hoping for your inputs here. Anyone want to jump in?
Wow. No one jumps in. Nobody wants to jump in. So I'll jump in first. Yeah, I definitely think this was kind of an odd release in regards to, we had a lot of people refocus on activities, some within their domain and some outside their domain. So it's not a surprise from that perspective. Though it's probably a bigger question that we may want to ask folks is like, you know, do we feel like things are just humming, or like we're just satisfied with the status quo? Versus the other way, though it'd be hard to be differentiated from this past month. I'm sure in a lot of people's cases. I mean, should we try to shake things up? It's a different way to say it. Go ahead.
I felt that we should constantly ask feedback from our team members, but also I felt we should give our team members freedom to not leave comments for a particular milestone. Maybe I felt like there's no pattern, like it's consistent team members will leave the feedback every single milestone. Sometimes in my team, there tend to be more feedback, and some releases there less feedback. I think we should give the freedom, and also at the same time, we make sure we consistently encourage the negative feedback.
Craig, you're off of mute. Is there anything you wanted to address?
I was trying to figure out how to verbalize it. Thanks for putting me on the spot, though. I'm wondering, so we did focus on improvement this milestone, right? It was, I think most teams were involved in some kind of rapid action, and which is a focus on improving the productivity of the application. I wonder if maybe there was some status report fatigue, right? Because with the rapid action, there are daily stand-ups, like what did I work on, what's next? And maybe just the feedback loop, people got tired of giving feedback, and maybe that's why we got less traffic on this retro, because as listed above, we had 5 or 6 other retros for this month. I'm pontificating, I have no data to support any of those statements, but maybe that's how I feel, and that's why I'm saying it. So,
well, yeah, and I was going to tend to it. Sorry to jump in there, Tanya. Did you want to speak? I didn't mean to speak over you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I would tend to agree. We've had a lot going on, and a lot of people have been working really hard to address some of these key issues that we have, and doing awesome work. Obviously, I think that's been made pretty clear, and it feels like maybe some of these the retrospectives we have on other things probably capture a lot of what people have been focused on because we've necessarily need to be focused on these other activities. And so perhaps if we went and looked at those retros, we'd probably see a bunch of feedback on ways we can improve that would probably be aligned with what Craig's saying, I think.
I think it's also safe to say that the what went wrong was is being addressed by the rapid actions. So it's pretty easy to say what went wrong is X, Y, and Z, and that's why we have these rapid actions. I think it's also a really good point, Craig, that you made. Potentially there's enough focusing on the negative that people, I mean, the what went well was robustly populated. So maybe people needed to focus on that to keep their spirits up. Any other thoughts here?
I just wonder if there's thoughts on if that is the case and it's kind of status fatigue. And as we all know, it takes effort to communicate in that way. Is there ways we could improve the kind of process around that, make it easier for people to provide that feedback without maybe having to take extra time, to provide it in another form?
I think it's one and two are very tightly coupled. Because if you have less engagement, then it's less engagement across the board, whether it's win or admitting that bad things happen. So I think overall increasing engagement would help. I'm excited to discuss point two. So whenever we want to move on to that.
Yeah, I just want to there's a written update here from John. Do you want to verbalize that before I move on?
Yeah, sure. It just kind of occurred to me because we did take some feedback on the effect of the rapid actions in the retrospective, but normally we'd take corrective actions against things that we'd planned, like how did we perform against what we planned to achieve in the milestone. And we kind of pivoted as soon as we'd finished planning and did a whole bunch of other stuff instead. But we did take some feedback on the actual rapid actions itself, which I've put in the improvement section as well.
Thomas, do you want to vocalize yours?
Sure, but I was wordsmithing as I typed it. So, but also I'll do this live in the spirit of others that I said beforehand. So we actually had an uptick in commentary within the static analysis retro with 1312. And most of it was because I had folks contributing to parts of the product they don't normally contribute towards. But it wasn't in the what went wrong or how we can improve, or there was some on the side, but it's a lot of it was couched in we're interacting with things bigger than ourselves, so they don't know if they're empowered to contribute towards improving that. So those are separate conversations that we were having. Unrelated to this, because commentary has been dropping within static analysis itself, I have it as an OKR in Q2 to change our format to be more qualitative rather than quantitative rather than qualitative. We're going to go more metrics heavy and use that as a way to seed feedback. We'll see how it works. But we've been a relatively stable group, so I'm wondering if everybody's gotten comfortable. That's just from what I see, and it's just curiosity.
Thomas, would you be open to tracking that as an improvement for next release, reporting back on any changes that you consider making and what impact they might have?
I think it is too soon for next release. This is a quarterly OKR, so I really want to give this some time to bake. We're going to do our first change we're going to change the format in 1312. So I would be happy to do so after 14.1.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. In the spirit of time, we've reached our 7 minutes for that one. Let's move on to 2, which is very closely related, as Mike said. So how do we drive participation in the retros? Engagement was low this time around. I put some stats in there, but there were only 20 unique people who added notes here across 70 people who were pinged for the 37 groups. And there were no suggestions for discussion topics, which I think was the same in the previous retrospective and potentially previous ones as well. So how do we foster that collaboration and increase the value of the synchronous time that we have together?
Ty, I had a question. Is the participation low on the roll-up? And we're getting a lot of comments from everyone in the retrospective issues, or is it just low across the board? There's not much comments in the retrospective issues as well, the one that we automatically generate for every product group.
I didn't look through the individual product group ones. Maybe other people could chime in on if they're seeing a trend in theirs. I think quality's had good participation for what that's worth.
We also had an increase, I'd say, this last milestone within threat management as well.
I think the editor group continues to have good engagement. I really enjoy retrospectives and important topics come up.
I do wonder if some of the folks who aren't engaged and aren't participating aren't here to say so and why. If they're not engaging asynchronously, they might not be here synchronously as well.
I've talked to several people who find more value in the team retrospective than the larger one, and I think that that's valid. I come as a manager to represent the whole team, and I would hope that other managers do that because I learn a lot when people bring things to these discussions. I also wanted to note we've seen an increase in stable counterparts coming to our retrospective. So PMs, technical writers, I think that's fantastic.
In the retrospective issues, correct, Lindsay? Is that the one?
No, I actually mean in the synchronous discussion. So we do sometimes see counterparts chiming in the retrospective issues, but I've seen more participation over the last milestone or two in the synchronous discussions from those counterparts, actually.
I've seen that too, and that's really valuable also to get a different outside perspective. Like after this last one, I was talking with our stable counterpart, and she made some observations that were really interesting that only an outsider might have seen.
John, do you want to vocalize your point here in the agenda?
Sure. She's probably okay with it. Amy Qualls, who's our new stable counterpart, she's been really great attending our retros and being really involved. And then we were just chatting a little bit afterwards, and she said, yeah, in the retro, it had come up that people felt overworked and spread thin. And she's like, yeah, y'all just seem tired. I was like, yeah, maybe we do.
So am I understanding correctly that there are other retrospective meetings for each product group happening, and then information is not flowing into this one, or is, please help me understand.
So speaking for database team, we do ours fairly regularly, synchronously. I mean, that was feedback from a retro, like, hey, let's do it the first Thursday after end of the milestone. I think every team kind of does their team retrospective differently. When I was managing the memory team, we did it asynchronously. And for my teams in particular, there's a little bit lower participation this month because we had a couple people out on either paternity leave or vacation and then transitioning into a new team. So I noticed a little bit lower chatter this milestone, but I think it's just due to this situation of moving teams and stuff. So,
John, do you want to vocalize your point you've added here?
Yeah, sure. Like I've noticed this in the past, just that, like, are we getting enough time between when people add things to the doc and then for everyone else to read it and pull out themes? I remember like when I tried the retro like a few months ago, and it might have changed since, but there were possible discussion topics that I thought would have been better than the ones I pulled out, but they kind of come in really late. And it's a real shame because you need other people to have time to digest what's in the document, like map it to their own feedback in their own retrospectives, and then come up with like responses that enrich the discussion.
That's probably a good observation, because I think historically, if we had it, say, for instance, on the 8th or the 10th of the month, that generally those seem to be fuller. The one thing is usually it's like, like this one was a good time because it was a Thursday. We don't want to do Friday through Sunday, obviously. So that's kind of the logistics aspect of it for choosing a date. But we could consider moving it back permanently to like the 8th or later, if engineering managers feel like that would be useful to them.
Yeah, and I know I sometimes struggle to determine what's going to be a good conversation topic to add from a specific team agenda to a broad conversation like this. I usually try to add things and wins and things. I think those are really valuable here as well to call out. It might be nice to have that type of acknowledgement of like, here's a success, some of what Meg was mentioning before as well. But yeah, I know that can be difficult for me as well sometimes.
Yeah, maybe that's where we need to lower the bar. Very rarely do you hear me say that term, but like in this particular case, it seems valuable to not think in terms of like what you think only other people will perceive as valuable, but just share as part of this. If we're not seeing the participation, maybe just sharing regardless of what you think the value is. So if people are already putting in their minds, well, I only want to share what's absolutely valuable, and I'm going to assume, my guess is we're sharing less than actually what, because your perception of what's valuable is never, oh, I shouldn't say never, but is often not aligned with what actually the value of something is.
And Meg, do you want to vocalize?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, I think at the lower levels, conversations are happening healthily. I think having a reminder for the leaders, the managers, to add the context in this doc would be great. I know Sam did a lot of socializing manually last cycle, so looking into a way to automate that and get that reminder out. I think would be also another iteration in addition to what Christopher suggested. And I think this should be tracked as the next improvement point for the retro, improving the retro points next time.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We can easily socialize in more channels than we do now. Hopefully get to more people. Great. Okay. In the interest of time, I'd like to close down the discussion points now and move on to the improvements to track for next release. So Donald, are you here? I don't think so.
Yeah, I can take this for Donald.
Thank you.
Yeah, it kind of ties to what Sam was talking about at the beginning of the retrospective. We had like members of the team with several P1s. And even at certain points, it seemed like those we'd already released some mitigations, but the P1 label remained when we could have revised it and stepped down the priority a little bit. So I don't know what action we're going to take yet, but it's also happening. And the particular piece of feedback we got was from a team member who's in APAC. And if we have a rapid action and we roll it through the time zones and we find a DRI in each time zone, it inevitably falls on the small number of people in the team who are in APAC. So in future, I think one thing we can do immediately is start to cast a wider net at that point if it's going to go into the APAC time zone and if it's that high priority. But we'll look at other actions as well.
Thank you. And I'll take the next one for Nick since he's not here. So this is reporting back on progress in the next retrospective about the lightweight training for multi-version compatibility. So that's in planning now, and hopefully the trainings happen next time. So we'll see an update there. Dan, do you want to vocalize yours?
Yeah, it occurred to me that both of what I was expecting to update on the cross-group dependencies and the risk mapping were part of our our quad planning process. So I'll update on what we are doing in that case for the next time.
Great. And the next one is on Christopher, Meg, and I to come up with at least one thing to try for the next retro to improve participation. We just discussed socializing requests for participation in more channels, but there may be other avenues as well, like the engineering we can review, socializing discussion topics sooner. Is there anything that anyone wants to vocalize here that I haven't covered?
I would say let's have a DRI. So Tanya, since you're doing the cycle, so we'd be honored if you can take this on and lean on me and Christopher to give feedback. Thank you.
I can vocalize mine. In my experience, a lot of the value of retros comes from action items. Talking is good, but it shouldn't just be talking or complaining or praising. You want it to result in change. That's the original point of Agile Retrospective. So perhaps we can encourage these individual groups to identify one important action item that they would like to roll up and try to achieve change at a higher level. So that might also encourage people to see that there's actually an avenue to get more value out of that sort of participation if it's going to make changes.
Christopher, I see you're adding a point. Do you want to vocalize and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, just more of, I like this idea a lot. Thanks for suggesting that, Chad. I think, Tanya, you and I got to figure out like how best to do this. Like, maybe we don't verbalize all of them, but it's like even just surfacing them may be part of this.
Great. So we're at the end of our time. Thank you everybody for joining and a really good discussion. I really appreciate your participation and